For thousands of years, the voices of ancient Egypt have been locked in stone. Now, artificial intelligence is finally turning the key. This technology is beginning to decipher hieroglyphs that have defied translation for centuries, reading messages our ancestors left behind. By the end of this, you will understand exactly how machines are learning to read this ancient script and what forgotten worlds they are revealing. We will journey from the first breakthroughs with the Rosetta Stone to the latest AI projects filling in the gaps. What forgotten pharaohs or lost wisdom might be waiting in those unread texts? What story from the ancient world would you most want to hear? Hieroglyphs are far more than a simple set of letters. This ancient script is a beautiful and intricate puzzle, a system that merges pictures with sounds. Some symbols, called logograms, represent an entire word or idea. A carving of a sun disk means the sun itself. Others function like letters in an alphabet, where a picture of an owl stands for the sound of the letter M. This dual nature, where a single inscription could be read both for its meaning and its sound, created a profound challenge for centuries. These sacred carvings were reserved for the most important messages, etched with immense care into the stone of temple walls and royal tombs, or painted onto precious papyrus scrolls. They were not meant for everyday communication, but to speak to the gods and to eternity. This very formality contributed to their mystery. When the ancient Egyptian civilization faded and its last priests died, the knowledge of how to read this complex code vanished for over 1,000 years. The Rosetta Stone provides the perfect example of this bewildering complexity. On its surface, you see the same decree written 3 times, in Greek, in Demotic, and in majestic hieroglyphs. The Greek was easily read, a known language. The hieroglyphs, however, presented a wall of silent, beautiful images. A bird, a hand, a woven basket. Were these pictures to be taken literally? Or were they representing sounds? Without a key, the meaning was utterly locked away. This was the monumental task facing scholars, to crack a code where a single text could be read on multiple levels, its true voice silenced by time. That slab of black granite, discovered by French soldiers in 1799, became the single most important artifact in Egyptology. Known as the Rosetta Stone, it held a decree from the reign of Pharaoh Ptolemy V, written in 3 distinct scripts. The bottom was ancient Greek, a language scholars could already read. The middle was Demotic, a cursive script used for everyday documents, and the top was the formal, pictorial hieroglyphs. For the first time, researchers had a direct translation guide, a linguistic key to a lost world. The race to decipher the stone consumed scholars for more than 2 decades. The brilliant French linguist Jean-François Champollion made the final, crucial leap. He realized that hieroglyphs were not just picture writing, but a complex mix of sound symbols and idea signs. He identified that the oval cartouches, those distinctive loops you often see in carvings, encircled the phonetic names of pharaohs. This was the breakthrough. By matching a cartouche on the Rosetta Stone to the name Ptolemy written in Greek, he could begin to assign sounds to the symbols inside, cracking the phonetic code. His work, culminating in the 1820s, finally gave voice back to the ancient Egyptians after a silence of over 1,000 years. But here is the crucial point, the reason we are talking about AI today. The Rosetta Stone was just one text. It provided the basic rules of the language, the grammar, and a core vocabulary. Yet it left entire dialects, local variations, and millions of other inscriptions only partially understood. Think of it like having a single page from a massive, multilingual encyclopedia. You can learn the alphabet from that page, but you cannot read the whole library. For 2 centuries, human experts have painstakingly applied Champollion's key to countless other texts, translating the most prominent inscriptions. But progress has been slow, a manual process of comparison and guesswork. Vast sections of temple walls, thousands of papyrus fragments, and countless tomb inscriptions remain silent, their stories trapped in plain sight. The sheer volume of untranslated material is the new, silent wall that we now face. Even with Champollion's key in hand, the task of unlocking all of ancient Egypt's writings remained monumental. The central challenge for traditional Egyptology is one of overwhelming scale. Across the globe, in the storage rooms of museums and universities, lie countless artifacts covered in unread hieroglyphs. We are not talking about a few thousand symbols, but millions upon millions of them, etched onto stone fragments, painted on coffin lids, and scrawled across fragile papyri. Many of these texts have never been properly studied, simply because there are not enough human experts and lifetimes to examine them all. Each piece could hold a forgotten prayer, a legal record, or a piece of a pharaoh's lost history, yet they sit in silent storage, waiting for their turn. Beyond the sheer volume, the physical condition of these texts presents another immense barrier. Time has not been kind. Many stone surfaces are worn smooth by wind and sand, blurring the precise lines of a carving. Other inscriptions have been chipped away by vandals or later builders who reused the stones. On papyrus scrolls, the delicate ink has flaked off, leaving frustrating gaps in the middle of a sentence. A human translator is often faced with a puzzle where half the pieces are missing, forced to make an educated guess about what once filled the empty space. This leads directly to the third, deeply human challenge, the element of subjective interpretation. When two Egyptologists look at the same damaged set of symbols, they can sometimes arrive at two different translations. A single, ambiguous glyph might be read as a literal object or as a sound, completely changing the meaning of a phrase. One scholar might see a poetic metaphor, while another reads a straightforward account. These disagreements are not a sign of failure, but a natural consequence of deciphering a complex, ancient language with limited reference points. For 2 centuries, these 3 walls, the mountain of data, the damage of time, and the subjectivity of the human eye, have kept a significant portion of ancient Egypt's story just out of reach. This is where artificial intelligence enters the story, not as a replacement for human genius, but as a powerful new tool to overcome those very limitations of scale and damage. At its core, artificial intelligence is simply a machine's ability to perform tasks that we typically associate with a human mind, like recognizing patterns or making decisions. The real magic for our purposes lies in a specific branch called machine learning. Think of it not as programming a computer with rigid rules, but as teaching it to learn from examples, much like a child learns to identify a cat. You do not give the child a textbook on feline anatomy. You show them many pictures, pointing out which are cats and which are dogs. Over time, their brain builds a model, recognizing the patterns of whiskers, ears, and tails that define catness. Machine learning does the same thing. We feed a computer algorithm a massive amount of data, in this case, thousands of images of hieroglyphs that have already been translated by human experts. The algorithm analyzes this data, searching for recurring patterns and connections that are far too subtle or numerous for a person to consistently track. It learns, for instance, that a certain sequence of symbols, a bird followed by a ripple of water, almost always corresponds to a specific verb in the translated text. It begins to build its own statistical model of the Egyptian language. The most advanced systems use something called deep learning, which employs artificial neural networks. These networks are loosely inspired by the human brain, with layers of digital nodes that process information. Each layer looks for a different level of detail. The first layer might just identify edges and shapes, discerning the carved line of a snake from the stone background. The next layer could combine those shapes to recognize a specific glyph. A deeper layer might then analyze how that glyph relates to the symbols before and after it, understanding context and grammar. This allows the AI to do more than just match pictures. It can start to infer meaning from damaged inscriptions. If half of a known symbol is missing, the neural network can cross-reference the remaining fragment with every other instance of that symbol it has learned, calculating the highest probability of what the complete glyph should be. It can also scan a wall of 1,000 symbols in seconds, flagging a unique cartouche that a human researcher, overwhelmed by the visual noise, might have missed. This is not about machines having a sudden spark of intuition like Champollion. It is about processing power and pattern recognition on an unimaginable scale, offering a digital lens to see what has been hidden in plain sight for millennia. So how does this digital mind actually learn to see a 3,000-year-old symbol? The process begins with computer vision. a field of artificial intelligence that trains machines to interpret and understand the visual world. Think of it as giving a computer a set of digital eyes and then teaching its brain what it is looking at. To do this, researchers first assemble a massive digital library, a dataset containing thousands of photographs and detailed scans of hieroglyphs. Each image in this library is meticulously labeled by human Egyptologists. This one is a vulture glyph, this is a horned viper. This series of lines represents the symbol for water. This labeled dataset becomes the AI's textbook. The training starts by showing the algorithm these images. At first, it is just guessing. It analyzes the raw pixels of a picture, a chaotic sea of light and dark points. It might look at a drawing of an owl and, having no prior knowledge, mistakenly focus on the background texture of the stone instead of the bird's shape. But with each guess, it receives feedback. When it correctly identifies the owl glyph, it is reinforced. When it fails, its internal parameters are adjusted, much like a student correcting a mistake on a practice test. Over millions of repetitions, the algorithm learns to ignore the irrelevant noise and isolate the key features that define each symbol. It learns that the sharp, curved line of a serpent's body is a more important identifier than the color of the granite it is carved into. It builds a complex statistical model of what makes a bird glyph a bird, based on the angles of its beak, the curve of its wing, and the proportion of its body. This is where the challenge of ancient art comes into play. A human artist did not carve each owl with identical precision. Styles changed over centuries, and individual craftsmen had their own flourishes. One owl might be drawn with a plump body, while another is sleek and stylized. The AI must learn the essential pattern of owlness that persists across all these variations, separating the core meaning from the artistic expression. This training is why a large, clean dataset is so vital. If the training images are blurry, or if the labels are inconsistent, the AI will learn the wrong lessons, becoming confused and unreliable. Once fully trained, this system can then look at a new, unread hieroglyph and in a fraction of a second, compare its shapes and lines against the vast model it has built, assigning a probability that it is looking at a specific symbol. It is not reading with understanding, not in the way we do. It is performing an incredibly sophisticated act of pattern matching, seeing the ghost of a familiar form in a brand new stone. But recognizing a single symbol is only the first step. The true challenge, and the real frontier for artificial intelligence, is grasping the grammar that weaves these symbols into a story. Hieroglyphic Egyptian is a complete language with its own complex rules of syntax, verb forms, and sentence structure. It is not enough for a machine to see an owl, a leg, and a basket. It must understand how their arrangement creates a specific meaning, a command, a prayer, or a king's title. This is the leap from simple pattern matching to genuine linguistic analysis. To teach this, researchers use a method called sequence modeling. They feed the AI massive corpora of texts that have already been perfectly translated by humans. The algorithm does not just look at individual glyphs, it analyzes the entire sequence. It learns the statistical likelihoods of which symbols tend to follow others, and how those sequences correspond to translated words and phrases. For example, it might learn that a specific bird glyph often appears at the beginning of a verb phrase, or that a certain determinative, a silent symbol that clarifies a word's category, always follows the names of gods. It begins to internalize the rhythm and rules of the language. This training allows the AI to move beyond just identifying damaged symbols. It can now propose meanings for entirely unknown sequences of glyphs. Imagine an inscription where a known verb is followed by a group of 3 unknown symbols. A human scholar might spend weeks cross-referencing other texts for a clue. The AI, however, can instantly scan its entire model of the language. It calculates that this particular verb is almost always followed by a direct object from a certain semantic category, like a place or a type of offering. It then checks the 3 unknown symbols against its database, finding that their shape and context most closely match other words for, say, a temple or a specific city. It cannot give a definitive translation, but it can provide a highly probable suggestion. a starting point that a human expert can then investigate. This transforms the process. The machine becomes a collaborative decipherer, using its immense memory and computational power to propose connections that might take a human years to notice, accelerating the pace of discovery from a slow manual crawl to a guided, intelligent search. One ambitious project leading this charge is the Hieroglyphic AI initiative, a collaboration between major universities and tech pioneers. This initiative is feeding its algorithms a staggering volume of data, digitizing hundreds of thousands of inscribed fragments from museum collections worldwide. Their goal is not just to translate, but to map the entire evolution of the Egyptian language across 3,000 years, tracing how word meanings and grammatical structures shifted from the Old Kingdom to the Ptolemaic period. The scale is almost beyond human comprehension, involving the analysis of millions of individual glyphs, and the results are already yielding surprises. In one compelling case, the artificial intelligence was analyzing a well-known funerary text that had been studied by generations of Egyptologists. The human eye had always interpreted a certain repeated symbol as a stylized representation of a shrine. But the AI, trained on countless variations, flagged it as an anomaly. It calculated that the symbol's shape and its consistent position in certain phrases had a much higher statistical probability of being a rare logogram for a specific type of ritual purification. This was not a random guess. The machine cross-referenced every other instance of this glyph across its entire database, finding it in contexts where a shrine made little sense, but a rite of cleansing fit perfectly. This single suggestion forced researchers to re-examine dozens of inscriptions, potentially changing our understanding of key religious practices. It is a powerful demonstration of the machine's role, not as a final authority, but as a brilliant research assistant that can spot subtle patterns invisible to even the most trained expert. Perhaps the most profound use of this technology lies in its ability to give voice to the broken and the lost. Across countless monuments, time has erased entire passages, leaving behind frustrating gaps where history should be. This is where artificial intelligence moves from simple translation to digital restoration. The key is contextual prediction, a concept familiar to anyone who uses a smartphone. When you start typing a message, your phone suggests the next word based on patterns it has learned from billions of other texts. AI does something remarkably similar with hieroglyphs, but on a much deeper and more complex level. It analyzes the symbols that remain intact on either side of a damaged section, and then, drawing from its vast database of known Egyptian texts, it calculates the most probable sequence of missing glyphs. It understands that certain phrases are formulas, repeated in specific contexts like prayers or royal decrees. It knows the typical grammar that connects a subject to a verb, or a verb to its object. So when it encounters a blank space, it is not just guessing randomly. It is reconstructing based on the rules and rhythms of the entire language. Consider a tomb wall where a segment of a funerary prayer has crumbled away. A human Egyptologist sees a carved line of symbols, then a patch of rough, blank stone where the carving has fallen away, followed by more legible glyphs. They might recognize the beginning of a common phrase asking for offerings, but the specific items requested are lost. The AI, however, processes the entire scene. It reads the intact glyphs before the gap, which spell out a verb meaning to grant. It then reads the glyphs after the gap, which are determinatives for food and drink. Instantly, it cross-references its model. It knows that in thousands of other tomb inscriptions, this particular verb is most frequently followed by a list of sustenance items for the afterlife. It calculates the precise amount of space available in the damaged section and searches for offering lists that would fit both physically and contextually. The algorithm might then generate a ranked list of probabilities. Its top suggestion could be the sequence for bread, beer, and oxen, a very common trio of ritual offerings. It provides this not as a definitive answer, but as the strongest, most data-driven hypothesis, giving the human researcher a concrete starting point for reconstruction. This transforms a blank space from a dead end into a question with a probable answer. allowing us to hear the echo of words that have been silent for millennia. Some of the most stubborn puzzles are not the beautiful, formal carvings, but the ones that look like simple mistakes. Scattered throughout Egypt are inscriptions that experts call nonsense hieroglyphs. These are sequences of symbols that, when read with the standard rules, produce gibberish. A text might seem to describe a pharaoh making an offering of a basket, a leg, and a sun disk, a combination that makes no logical sense. For a long time, Egyptologists dismissed these as scribble errors, the work of an apprentice practicing his craft or a stone carver who simply got it wrong. But what if these apparent mistakes are not mistakes at all? What if they are a different kind of message entirely, hidden in plain sight? One compelling theory suggests these are phonetic spellings of foreign words and names. Imagine an Egyptian scribe trying to record the name of a visiting Hittite prince or a trade good from a distant land. His own language had no direct equivalent for those foreign sounds. So he would have done what we do when we encounter a foreign word. He would have sounded it out. He would have strung together hieroglyphs whose phonetic values approximated the strange new word. To later readers, this string of symbols would look like nonsense, but it was actually a brilliant, practical solution. Another theory posits that some of these texts are cryptographic codes, perhaps used for restricted religious knowledge or sensitive political messages. A priest might rearrange the standard meanings of symbols to conceal a ritual secret from the uninitiated, or a court official might use a cipher to communicate a plot. There is even the possibility that some are indeed student exercises, but that studying them could reveal how scribes were trained, giving us a window into ancient education. This is precisely where artificial intelligence becomes a revolutionary tool. A human expert, trained for decades on classical, correct hieroglyphs, might naturally lean towards dismissing an odd inscription as an error. An AI has no such preconceptions. It does not assume a text is wrong. It simply analyzes the raw data, searching for any pattern, any statistical deviation from the norm. It can take a seemingly nonsensical sequence and run it through its vast model of known languages, both Egyptian and others from the ancient Near East. It is asking a simple, unbiased question. Does this strange sequence of symbols have a high probability of matching the phonetic structure of a Hittite word, or a Canaanite name, or a Libyan place name? The machine can test thousands of linguistic hypotheses in the time it takes a person to read a single paragraph. By detecting these underlying structures, I could uncover lost chapters of diplomacy and trade, revealing the voices of foreigners who visited Egypt, their names and titles preserved not in their own script, but in the clever phonetic approximations of Egyptian scribes. It might even crack a cryptographic system by identifying a consistent pattern of symbol substitution that has eluded human code breakers for centuries. These apparent errors could be a backdoor into the more secretive and interconnected aspects of the ancient world. This partnership between human and machine is transforming the daily work of an Egyptologist. Think of the AI as a tireless, superhuman research assistant. A scholar might be investigating the symbol for a rare type of ceremonial incense. Traditionally, finding every single instance of that glyph across all known texts would be a lifetime's work, requiring a researcher to manually flip through photographs of thousands of inscriptions in dozens of museum catalogs. It is a needle in a haystack search that could take years. Now, an AI tool can accomplish this in minutes. The Egyptologist simply inputs the glyph, and the algorithm scans entire digital archives, millions of symbols, instantly returning every occurrence. It can even find stylized or partially damaged versions of the symbol that a human eye might skip over. This is not about replacing the scholar's expertise. It is about freeing it. Suddenly, instead of spending months on a tedious search, the Egyptologist can immediately begin the real work, analyzing why that incense appears in certain tombs and not others, what it tells us about trade routes for exotic resins, or how its religious significance changed over centuries. The machine handles the brute force data retrieval, while the human provides the historical context, the cultural insight, and the narrative understanding. This collaborative loop, where the AI surfaces patterns and the expert interprets their meaning, is accelerating the entire field. Discoveries that once required a career of dedicated searching can now emerge in a single afternoon, allowing us to connect the dots of ancient history at an unprecedented pace. Deep within a carbonized scroll from the Library of Herculaneum lies a text that has been unreadable for nearly 2,000 years. This papyrus was flash-burnt by the volcanic eruption of Mount Vesuvius, turning it into a brittle, blackened log that would crumble at the slightest touch. For centuries, its secret seemed permanently lost, the ink invisible to the naked eye against the charred background. But now, a multi-stage technological rescue mission is underway, with artificial intelligence acting as the primary archaeologist. The first step is to see the unseen. Researchers use a technique called multi-spectral imaging, which photographs the scroll under different wavelengths of light, from infrared to ultraviolet. The ancient carbon-based ink, though visually fused with the papyrus, reflects this light differently than the plant fibers around it. To our eyes, the scroll appears as a uniform black cylinder. But to the sensors, subtle differences in reflectance reveal the ghostly shapes of letters hidden just beneath the surface. This generates thousands of high-contrast image fragments, a digital puzzle of stark black lines on a white background. This is where the machine learning model takes over. It has been trained on a large corpus of known Greek texts, as this scroll is believed to be a philosophical work. The eye does not just look for individual letters. It analyzes the entire structure of the script, learning the handwriting style of this specific scribe, the way he formed his alphas and his betas. It looks for word boundaries and common grammatical sequences. As it scans the enhanced images, it begins to string together probable words, then phrases, building a translation hypothesis from the ground up. The potential locked inside this single document is staggering. This is not a royal decree, but a personal scroll from a private library. It could contain a lost dialogue by Aristotle, a previously unknown historical account, or a treatise on daily life and morality that gives us the true voice of an ordinary Roman citizen, not a king. Every sentence reconstructed is a direct line to a mind that was silenced in an instant, a thought preserved in ash, now waiting for an artificial intelligence to help it finally be heard. Yet this powerful tool is far from infallible. Like a brilliant student who has only read one set of textbooks, an artificial intelligence is only as good as the data it learns from. This is the fundamental principle of garbage in, garbage out. If the training dataset is filled with old, outdated translations or contains human errors in labeling, the AI will faithfully learn those mistakes and repeat them with unwavering confidence. It has no way of knowing that a symbol was misidentified 50 years ago. It simply absorbs that error as fact. This can create a dangerous feedback loop, where flawed data begets flawed conclusions, potentially cementing historical misunderstandings on a massive scale. The machine also lacks any true cultural or historical context. It can learn that a sequence of symbols translates to the phrase "great house," but it cannot inherently understand that this term was a profound title for the pharaoh himself. Without that deeper knowledge, an AI might interpret a text about the great house leading an army as a literal story about a palace going to war, producing a translation that is grammatically possible but historically absurd. This lack of common sense can lead to translations that are technically accurate yet completely nonsensical, missing the metaphor, poetry, and symbolic meaning that are woven into the very fabric of ancient texts. This connects to one of the most significant risks in modern AI, the phenomenon of hallucinations. When faced with a badly damaged or utterly unfamiliar inscription, the algorithm is under pressure to produce a result. Instead of admitting uncertainty, it can sometimes generate a confident but entirely fabricated guess, stitching together plausible-looking glyphs and phrases from its memory that have no basis in the actual source material. It might invent a pharaoh's name or a battle that never happened, presenting its creative fiction as a factual translation. This is precisely why human oversight remains the irreplaceable core of this process. The Egyptologist acts as the final gatekeeper of truth, applying a lifetime of contextual knowledge to ask the critical questions. Does this translation make historical sense? Does it align with what we know about this pharaoh's reign? Does it feel like a genuine voice from the past? The machine provides the raw, computational power, but the human provides the wisdom, ensuring that the stories we recover are not just statistically probable, but authentically, beautifully true. But these powerful tools also raise profound new questions for our modern world. Who truly owns a story once it is pulled from the stone? When an artificial intelligence deciphers a text, the knowledge it reveals becomes a point of intense debate. Does that knowledge belong to the nation where the artifact was discovered, as part of its cultural heritage? Or does it belong to the university or company in another country that funded and built the deciphering AI? This is the complex issue of cultural patrimony. A papyrus scroll might physically reside in a European museum, but the words it contains are the voice of ancient Egypt. As these technologies make it easier to read such texts from anywhere in the world, the lines of ownership become blurred, challenging the traditional ways we have managed and shared cultural treasures. Another critical concern lies hidden within the data used to train these systems. Most of the perfectly translated texts we have come from royal tombs and state temples, the writings of the elite. If an AI model is trained almost exclusively on the words of pharaohs and priests, how can it possibly understand the graffiti of a laborer or the personal letter of a merchant? Its entire understanding of the language is built on a foundation of power and privilege. This built-in bias means the machine might misinterpret a commoner's simple, direct plea, forcing it into the formal grammatical structures of a royal decree. It could systematically overlook the voices of the very people who built the civilization, simply because their writings were less often preserved and studied. The stories we recover risk telling only one side of history, the view from the palace walls, unless we consciously work to diversify the data that teaches our machines. The promise of this technology is to hear every voice from the past, but first we must ensure we are listening to them all. This 3,000-year span of history is not a single, frozen moment in time. The language of the pharaohs evolved as dramatically as their empire, shifting and adapting across the centuries. We can think of it like the English of Chaucer compared to the English we speak today. The same is true for hieroglyphs, and artificial intelligence gives us the first tool capable of mapping that entire journey. By training machine learning models on texts that have been securely dated by archaeologists, the AI learns the unique fingerprint of each era. It does not just see a bird glyph, it learns that during the Old Kingdom, that bird was carved with a stout, robust body. 500 years later, in the Middle Kingdom, the same bird might be rendered with a longer, more elegant neck. These are not random artistic choices. They are chronological markers, subtle shifts in style that the machine can detect with mathematical precision. The eye analyzes thousands of these tiny variations, building a statistical model of change. It learns the probability that a text using a certain verb form and a particular set of slender, stylized animal figures was written during the Ramesside period, rather than the era of the pyramid builders. This turns the language itself into a clock. Beyond the shapes of the symbols, the AI tracks the life of the words themselves. It can trace the birth of a new term, like the word for a specific type of chariot that only appears after contact with foreign powers. It can watch as other words slowly fade from use, their meanings forgotten as the world changed. The algorithm processes the entire known corpus, calculating the frequency of every word in every century. It might reveal that a common term for grain in the Old Kingdom was completely replaced by a new word by the time of the New Kingdom, a linguistic shift that could reflect a change in agricultural technology or even a social revolution. This analysis extends to grammar itself. The way a sentence was constructed, the order of a subject and a verb, the use of certain prefixes, all of these elements evolved. I can detect when a once common grammatical structure falls out of fashion, pinpointing the transition with a resolution that was previously impossible. This powerful ability to data text through its language has a direct and thrilling application, solving the mystery of undated artifacts. Countless inscriptions sit in museum cases without a clear historical context. They were found by early explorers who did not keep precise records, or they are fragments from a larger wall that has been lost. For a human expert, placing such an object in time is a matter of stylistic intuition and painstaking comparison. But for the AI, it is a calculation, Researchers can feed the unknown text into the trained model. The algorithm analyzes every aspect of its language, the shapes of its glyphs, its vocabulary, its grammar. It then compares this unique profile against its vast timeline, searching for the best match. The result is not a vague guess, but a statistically grounded suggestion. This inscription has a 95% probability of originating from the late 18th dynasty. This kind of precision can completely rewrite the history of an object, connecting a forgotten priest or official to a specific pharaoh's court, and anchoring a floating piece of the past firmly onto the historical timeline. The ultimate gift of this research is a new vision of ancient Egypt, not as a monolithic, unchanging civilization, but as a vibrant, dynamic culture. We are no longer looking at a single, faded photograph. We are watching a time-lapse video of a living language. We can see how political upheavals, foreign invasions, and economic changes left their mark on the very words people used to describe their world. The static picture on the temple wall begins to move, to breathe, to tell a story of adaptation and survival that lasted for millennia. Every subtle shift in a glyph's curve, every new word that entered the lexicon, becomes a clue to a much larger story. A story that artificial intelligence is now helping us read for the very first time. Beyond the grand narratives of pharaohs and conquests, a quieter history waits in the shadows. While kings commissioned vast temple walls, countless ordinary Egyptians left their own marks in the rock-cut tombs that dot the cliffs. These non-royal inscriptions were once considered secondary, simple carvings compared to the state propaganda. But they hold the true heartbeat of the civilization, the personal stories of scribes, farmers, and merchants who built the world we study. Artificial intelligence is now becoming the key that unlocks these intimate voices. These texts are not standardized royal decrees. They are deeply personal biographies, often commissioned by the tomb owner themselves. They speak of a life well lived, listing honest professions. I was a scribe in the granary, diligent and just. I was an overseer of vineyards, and my wine was sweet. They name wives and children, expressing love and ensuring their family would be remembered and provided for in the afterlife. They contain direct personal prayers, pleas to the gods not for the glory of Egypt, but for simple, human needs. May my name be remembered, may my children prosper. Grant me a good burial after a long life. For decades, Egyptologists have struggled with the sheer volume of these texts. They are often shorter, more repetitive, and carved in less formal scripts, making them harder to translate with traditional methods. A human expert might pass over a simple string of symbols that reads, I, Penny, son of Happy, gave bread to the hungry. It seems straightforward, but when an eye processes 10,000 such inscriptions, it begins to see profound patterns emerge. It can analyze the entire corpus of these humble biographies and detect shifting social trends. It might reveal that during a period of famine, the phrase gave bread to the hungry appears with startling frequency, suggesting it was a point of great social pride and moral necessity. Or it could show how the ideal of a good life changed from one dynasty to the next, from military valor to administrative skill. By making these thousands of overlooked texts accessible, the machine allows us to move beyond the elite and listen to the chorus of everyday people. We begin to understand their fears of divine judgment, their hopes for their children's futures, and their simple pride in their craft. This is not the history of monuments, but of humanity. Each translated name is a person stepping out of the silence, and together, they tell the story of an entire civilization, not from its peak, but from its foundation. These sacred texts were the ultimate guidebooks for eternity, carved deep within pyramid chambers, painted on the coffins of nobles, and meticulously inscribed on papyrus scrolls placed with the dead. The pyramid texts, coffin texts, and the Book of the Dead contain some of humanity's most profound and enduring spiritual ideas. They are not simple stories, but complex collections of spells, incantations, and maps for the soul's perilous journey through the afterlife. For over a century, scholars have painstakingly translated these works, yet their sheer symbolic density means many layers of meaning remain just out of reach. This is where artificial intelligence enters the realm of the gods, not to demystify, but to help us listen more closely to the ancient whispers. One of the first things a machine can do is see the architecture of these rituals with perfect recall. A human expert knows that a certain spell for protecting the heart appears in multiple copies of the Book of the Dead, but might not instantly recall every single variation across hundreds of manuscripts. An eye, trained on every available text, can identify these ritual formulas with unerring precision. It can track a single phrase, like the negative confession where the deceased declares, "I have not stolen, I have not lied," across centuries and different social classes. It can then perform a kind of literary archaeology, showing how this core ethical concept evolved from a privilege of the king in the pyramid texts to a hope for every common person in the later Book of the Dead. This allows us to trace the democratization of the afterlife itself, watching as salvation slowly spread from the pharaoh to the people. The machine also helps with the immense challenge of damaged religious scrolls. A spell might be broken, with a crucial word for a deity's name or a specific offering missing. Using its knowledge of thousands of other funerary contexts, the AI can predict the most likely words to fill that sacred space. It understands that a description of the soul meeting Osiris, the god of the underworld, is almost always followed by a list of epithets praising him as Lord of Silence or Master of Eternity. By proposing the statistically most probable completion, it gives researchers a strong hypothesis for restoring the broken prayer, ensuring the ancient magic remains whole. Perhaps the most intriguing possibility lies in uncovering hidden patterns. Some Egyptologists have long suspected that certain sequences in these texts might hold a deeper, cryptographic meaning, a layer of knowledge reserved for high priests. A human brain, no matter how brilliant, would struggle to find a consistent cipher across 100,000 symbols, but an artificial intelligence, with its bias-free analysis, can search for those subtle mathematical patterns. It can test if the repetition of a certain god's name follows a numerical code, or if the arrangement of symbols in a column creates an acrostic spelling a secret phrase. It is not claiming to find conspiracy, but rather using its power to test scholarly theories that were previously untestable. By analyzing these guides for the dead with such incredible detail, we are not just reassembling old words. We are piecing together the ancient Egyptian soul, understanding their deepest fears of divine judgment and their most hopeful visions of a paradise in the field of reeds. This same pattern recognition power has a surprising and crucial role in the modern art world, protecting the past from forgery. Just as an expert can sometimes sense a fake painting from the brushstrokes, artificial intelligence is learning to spot a fake hieroglyph. It does this by becoming an unparalleled expert in the subtle art of ancient handwriting. The process begins by training a machine learning model on thousands of verified, authentic inscriptions. The algorithm is not just learning what a bird glyph looks like, it is learning how a specific dynasty's scribes carved that bird. It analyzes the microscopic details of each stroke, the depth and angle of the chisel mark, the consistent pressure applied to create a curve, and the exact proportions between a glyph's head and its body. It builds a statistical profile of authenticity, a digital fingerprint of a 3,000-year-old artistic tradition. When presented with a new, suspect artifact, perhaps a rare statue that has appeared on the market with a suspiciously perfect inscription, the AI goes to work. It scans the hieroglyphs and compares them against its vast model of known, genuine work. A human forger, no matter how skilled, will inevitably leave tiny traces of their own modern hand. Their muscle memory is different. The way they start and end a carved line might be slightly off. They might subconsciously make a glyph a fraction too symmetrical, or they might use a tool that leaves a microscopic mark not found in ancient quarries. The AI can flag these anomalies. It might detect that the stroke order in a serpent glyph is reversed, or that the spacing between symbols is statistically inconsistent with authentic texts from the same period. It is not looking for one giant mistake, but for a constellation of tiny, almost invisible deviations from the ancient norm. This helps museums and auction houses protect the integrity of the archaeological record, ensuring that the stories we piece together are built on genuine history, not clever modern deceptions. An archaeologist brushes dust from a stone block, and as she looks through her augmented reality glasses, ghostly text begins to overlay the carved symbols. The eye, connected to a satellite data stream, instantly analyzes the shapes and provides a preliminary translation right before her eyes. This is not science fiction, but the imminent future of fieldwork. Real-time decipherment transforms an excavation from a slow, methodical recovery into a dynamic conversation with the past. Instead of waiting months for a specialist to examine photographs back at a university, the team on the ground gets immediate clues. The translation might appear as a simple phrase, a name, or a keyword like treasury or royal scribe. This instant context completely changes the strategy of the dig. If the eye suggests a block mentions a temple's storage rooms, the team can adjust their trench to follow that architectural logic. If it identifies a cartouche of a little-known pharaoh, they know immediately they are standing in a historically significant area, prompting them to document every fragment with extreme care. This guidance prevents potentially destructive digging in the wrong direction and highlights the most promising areas for further exploration. The very process of discovery becomes accelerated and more intelligent, driven by data in the moment it is most needed. This technology also democratizes access to expert knowledge. A field school student, a local archaeologist, or a researcher from a small institution would all have the same powerful tool at their fingertips. They would not need decades of specialized training to get a basic sense of what they are uncovering, allowing more people to participate meaningfully in the recovery of history. The ancient stone, silent for millennia, would begin to whisper its secrets the very moment it sees the sun again, guiding the hands that set it free. What new stories will we hear when the past can speak to us the moment we find it? The power to read the past is no longer locked away in university libraries. Pioneering projects are now inviting everyone with an internet connection to join the decipherment effort from their own home. Online platforms have been created where you can look at high-resolution photographs of ancient papyri or temple walls and begin tagging the symbols you see. You might be asked to draw a box around a specific bird glyph or identify the direction a human figure is facing. This is not a game. It is genuine, frontline research. Every click, every classification you make, becomes a data point that helps train and refine the artificial intelligence. You are teaching the machine to see more clearly, and in return, it is teaching you to read the language of the pharaohs. This creates a remarkable feedback loop of learning and discovery, where a global community of amateur enthusiasts and citizen scientists is actively building the very tool that is unlocking history. Suddenly, a retired teacher in Tokyo or a high school student in Brazil can make a tangible contribution, spotting a pattern or a unique symbol that the algorithms might have missed. The collective effort of thousands of eyes accelerates the process exponentially, turning the monumental task of cataloging millions of glyphs into a shared global project. It proves that you do not need a doctorate to help recover a lost voice from the sands of time, only curiosity and a willingness to look. This is the true democratization of discovery, where the story of ancient Egypt is being pieced back together not just by experts in labs, but by people everywhere who believe that these forgotten stories deserve to be heard. A single, weathered line of text sits on a broken piece of limestone. The symbols are clear, but their sequence is unique, absent from all known dictionaries. This is the perfect challenge. First, we bring in a seasoned Egyptologist. She studies the inscription, her eyes tracing the familiar shapes in their unfamiliar order. She notes the presence of an arm holding a scepter, a glyph for power, followed by a horned viper, which carries the sound of an F. Then comes the puzzle, a rare bird symbol that looks like a heron. Her intuition, built on decades of studying royal propaganda, suggests a phrase. She proposes it reads, "The strong arm of the pharaoh subdues the rebel." The bird, in her view, is a determinative for a foreign or chaotic person, fitting the narrative of a king restoring order. It is an elegant, contextually satisfying translation. Now, the artificial intelligence takes its turn. It has no concept of pharaohs or rebels. It simply processes the sequence. It analyzes the first three symbols, confirming the arm and scepter as a known idiom for strength. It identifies the viper for its F sound. Then it focuses on the mysterious heron. Instead of interpreting it as an idea sign, The machine cross references every other instance of this specific bird glyph across its database of millions of texts. It finds a statistical link. In administrative texts from a specific period, this heron, when following a verb of action, consistently correlates with the word for famine or dearth. The ice-cold, data-driven proposal is, the strong arm strikes the famine. The difference is stunning. The human saw a political story, a king conquering a human enemy. The machine suggested an environmental crisis, a ruler battling a natural disaster. This is the core of their strengths. The Egyptologists applied deep cultural knowledge to frame a likely historical scenario. The AI, unbiased by narrative, detected a subtle linguistic pattern invisible to a single mind, pointing toward an economic or ecological event. One is not necessarily right and the other wrong. They have provided two different lenses on the same stone. The human insight gives us a story we expect to hear. The machine's analysis offers a story we never thought to look for, a reminder that the past often holds secrets far stranger than our assumptions. The very process of teaching a machine to read hieroglyphs is teaching us profound truths about how human language works. These artificial intelligence models are more than just translation tools. They are mirrors reflecting the deep, universal structures that underlie all human communication. By analyzing how a machine learns to connect a picture of an owl to the sound of an M, linguists are gaining new insights into the ancient, intricate dance between written symbols and the spoken word. This journey into ancient Egypt has become my unexpected window into the fundamental architecture of the human mind. Consider the relationship between a symbol and its meaning. A human child learns that the squiggle we call the letter A represents a specific sound. An ancient Egyptian scribe learned that the image of an owl did the same. The AI, trained on thousands of these pairings, confirms a powerful linguistic principle, that writing systems, no matter how pictorial, are ultimately built on a cognitive leap to abstraction. The machine does not see a bird, it sees a data point in a complex matrix of sound relationships. This reveals that our own brains are performing a similar, miraculous feat every time we read, instantly converting arbitrary shapes into rich meaning and sound. Furthermore, the way these models parse Egyptian grammar is illuminating universal patterns. The AI found that it could most accurately translate texts when it learned to predict the sequence of parts of speech, not just individual words. It discovered that certain grammatical structures, like the order of a subject, a verb, and an object, have a predictable logic that transcends this single language. This suggests that our own neural pathways for language might be wired to expect these same logical sequences, a kind of universal grammar that the machine is statistically uncovering from the dust of 3,000 years. What we built to decode the pharaohs is now helping to decode the very blueprint of human thought itself. This new understanding of ancient lives holds the power to reshape modern economies. When artificial intelligence helps us redate a monument or correctly attribute a statue to a forgotten pharaoh, it does more than just correct a history book. It fundamentally changes the story we can tell about a place, and stories are the very heart of cultural tourism. Imagine a tour guide in the Valley of the Kings, standing before a tomb long thought to belong to a minor official. Now, thanks to AI analysis of the interior inscriptions, that tomb is suddenly linked to a powerful queen from a turbulent dynasty. The narrative transforms instantly. It is no longer a simple chamber of a bureaucrat, but the final resting place of a key political player, a woman who influenced the fate of empires. That is a new story, a new headline, and a powerful reason for a visitor to make the journey. This renewed narrative drives a cycle of investment. Increased public interest leads to more visitors. More visitors generate higher ticket revenues for the sites themselves. This vital funding can be directly funneled back into conservation, paying for the delicate work of stabilizing crumbling walls, cleaning soot from painted reliefs, and protecting these fragile spaces from the wear and tear of time and tourism itself. It creates a virtuous circle where discovery fuels preservation, and preservation ensures that the stories and the economic benefits they bring can continue for generations to come. This is not just about academic pride, it is about building a sustainable future for the past. where every translated word can help pay for the stone it is written on. The silent scripts of lost civilizations represent our final frontier in ancient history. For over a century, the Minoan linear, a script from Crete, has resisted every human attempt at translation. We have the symbols, but the underlying language remains a ghost. This is precisely the kind of impossible puzzle where artificial intelligence could soon make the first breakthrough. An AI system, trained on the known structure of related scripts like Linear B, could analyze the statistical patterns in Linear A's symbols, searching for the hidden fingerprints of a language family. It might not give us a perfect dictionary, but it could finally point decisively to whether the language is a unique isolate or a forgotten relative of Greek or Anatolian tongues, cracking open a window to the sophisticated Minoan palace culture that predates classical Greece by 1,000 years. Beyond single scripts, we could witness the digital resurrection of entire lost libraries. Imagine an algorithm trained on every surviving sentence from the Great Library of Alexandria. By understanding the stylistic patterns of authors like Aristotle or Aristarchus, the AI could then analyze tiny, carbonized fragments from the Villa of the Papyri in Herculaneum. It could begin to reassemble the texts, not just filling in gaps, but intelligently predicting which lost work a fragment likely belongs to based on its vocabulary and grammatical structure. We might one day read a complete play by Sophocles or the lost histories of Herodotus, reconstructed from a handful of charred pieces. The most profound shift, however, will come when these systems move from translation to hypothesis generation. And I could process every single translated text on Egyptian astronomy, cross-reference it with celestial records from Babylon, and then search for subtle correlations in the religious texts that human scholars have overlooked. It might propose a new theory, suggesting that a specific, repeated epithet for the goddess nut is not merely poetic, but encodes an advanced understanding of a lunar cycle. It could analyze thousands of medical papyri alongside archaeological data on disease and diet, generating a new model of ancient Egyptian pathology that reveals how they diagnosed and treated illnesses we still struggle with today. These would not be answers spat out by a machine, but powerful, data-rich questions presented to human researchers. The AI becomes a partner in curiosity, using its inhuman memory to connect dots across disciplines and centuries, proposing possibilities that no single expert, no matter how brilliant, could ever see from their solitary vantage point. The next decade promises not just a clearer picture of the ancient world, but a fundamentally new way of thinking about it, where every recovered word becomes a seed for 1,000 new questions. From a single stone to a global network of digital minds, our journey through time has been extraordinary. We have watched as artificial intelligence learned first to see the individual symbols, distinguishing an owl from a vulture with an artist's eye. Then it grasped the complex grammar that wove those symbols into stories, understanding the sacred syntax of a pharaoh's decree. We have seen it perform digital archaeology, restoring prayers from dust and proposing meanings for texts once dismissed as nonsense. At every step, this technology has served as the ultimate research partner, a tireless assistant that handles the immense scale of data, so human experts can focus on the deeper meaning. This collaboration is the true breakthrough. It is not about machines replacing human curiosity, but about powerfully augmenting it, giving our innate desire to understand the past a set of tools that were once the stuff of dreams. The silent walls of ancient temples are now beginning to hum with a new life. After millennia of quiet, the voices of scribes, farmers, and kings are finding a new audience, translated through a perfect fusion of humanity's oldest writings and its newest technology. We are standing at the threshold of a new era of listening, so we turn this final thought over to you. With all of history's library now opening its doors, which lost story are you most eager to hear? Let us know in the comments below, and subscribe to join us on the next adventure into history's greatest mysteries.